Come the night I stopped being a husband, I was wearing an orange safety vest and a neck brace. There was blood dried in my hair, my left arm was strapped to my chest, and a nurse with tired eyes was apologizing because we tried your wife first, for about 3 hours. I remember the fluorescent lights more than the pain. Hospitals in Dallas all seem to use the same kind of bulbs that make everyone look half dead. My head was pounding from the concussion. My ribs felt like they'd been used as a xylophone, and somewhere outside the curtain somebody's TV was playing a football game. "What do you mean you tried my wife?" I asked. My tongue felt thick. The morphine had taken the edge off, but not enough to blur the words. The nurse, small, gray streak in her ponytail, badge that said Angela RN, checked the monitor like it might give her a better answer. "She's listed as your primary emergency contact on your chart," she said. "We started calling as soon as you were stable enough for CT. We left a couple voicemails. It went to some kind of focus mode, I think. Silence. I don't know the setting name." My phone was sitting in a plastic evidence bag on the rolling tray, spiderweb cracks shattering the screen, flecks of gravel embedded in it like it had tried to stop my fall. It was as broken as I felt. "How long?" I asked. She hesitated. That was the moment I knew I wasn't going to like the answer. "We finally got her on the phone just before shift change," she said carefully. "So, almost 3 hours after you arrived. We needed consent to admit you and to notify family. She sounded surprised." "Surprised?" I stared at her. Surprised by what? The fact that her husband fell 20 feet off a pole. The nurse's eyes softened. "Surprised we were calling, I think," she said. Angela glanced down at her own notes like she'd written it because she knew it would matter later. She said, "Can this wait? I'm in a mud bath." I blinked at her, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. Those were the exact words that blew a hole through 9 years together. Not the fall, not the partial tear in my rotator cuff, not the concussion. 7 words from the woman who was supposed to be the person the hospital could count on when my body couldn't. "Can this wait? I'm in a mud bath." Something very simple clicked in my head. Not anger. Anger is hot, messy, loud. This was different. It was cold, clean, like a breaker finally flipping after buzzing for years. "Who's with me?" I asked. "Right now," Angela checked the door. "Your brother is on his way. We called your secondary after we finally spoke to your wife. He said he'd be here in 20. "Tyler," I muttered. My eyes stung for a second, and not from the pain. "Of course he is." I lay there listening to the monitor beep, and to that damn football game down the hall, and I thought about how my wife had put her phone on Do Not Disturb, so she wouldn't be bothered while strangers painted her face with clay. And the only reason I wasn't alone was because I'd put my brother's name on every form I could. Sometimes you don't know you've already left a relationship until your body catches up. The next morning, my body caught up in HR's office. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Ryan. I'm 34. I lived, in a suburb just east of Dallas, in a 2-story brick house with a sagging fence, a patchy lawn, and until recently, a diffuser that was always pumping out lavender oil because my wife said the vibes needed support. I'm a lineman for an electrical utility. That's not code for criminal. It just means I climb power poles and hang off bucket trucks in thunderstorms so your lights come back on when a branch takes out a transformer. It's not a safe job. You read about us when someone doesn't go home. We work with high voltage in high places. I've seen guys burned because someone forgot a ground. I've been on an all-night storm call where we watched a man's boot fall 20 feet before we realized he wasn't wearing it anymore. We have safety meetings where the stories end with, and that's why there's a plaque with his name on it by the break room. You don't get into that line of work thinking you're invincible. You get into it because your hands are better with tools than keyboards. You like working outside, and you can live with risk if you respect it. I respected it. I wore my harness. I checked my lines. I followed lockout-tagout like scripture. The danger I didn't factor in was the idea that the person I trusted most would treat my life like background noise. Megan and I met at a friend's cookout downtown when we were 24. She worked front desk at a yoga studio at the time and had this easy laugh that made everyone in a 10-foot radius listen harder. Brown hair into a messy bun, Lululemon before I knew what that cost, talking about Reiki and listening to your body. I was wearing steel-toed boots and a shirt with my company's logo on it, smelling like creosote from a long day in the field. She wrinkled her nose when she hugged me later and told me I smelled like work. Somehow she made it sound like a compliment. She used to tell people she fell in love with how grounded I was. I liked that she was light. I grew up in a house where the only self-care my mom recognized was a glass of wine after a double shift and 10 minutes of daytime TV alone before someone yelled from the hallway. Megan made bubble baths into events. Rituals, she called them. Self-care was cute in the beginning. Candles, playlists with names like Sunday Reset, sheet masks that made her look like a marshmallow ghost. It was easy to laugh about the salt lamps and crystal grids when she still answered my calls and came to my union barbecues. But there's a fine line between taking care of yourself and using protecting my peace as a reason to never be inconvenienced. The first time I noticed the emergency contact thing, we were 3 years into our marriage. We were sitting in the waiting room at her OB-GYN, trying to figure out if we could get pregnant without the universe spontaneously combusting. She'd handed me a clipboard to fill out my own forms for a checkup I'd scheduled with a family doctor in the same building. I remember I was happy that day. Our biggest problem then seemed to be branding. She'd just gotten certified as a holistic wellness coach and had started a small Instagram page where she posted smoothie recipes and meditations under the handle at Aligned with Megs. She leaned over my shoulder while I filled out the address. "Emergency contact," I asked, "you or Tyler?" She laughed. "Obviously me," she said, tapping her own wedding ring on the metal clipboard like a tiny gong. She wrote her mom's name down on her own form instead of mine. I noticed, but I didn't say anything. It's her body, her comfort, I told myself. And honestly, her mom, Lisa, is solid. Old-school Texas woman, the kind who has a casserole in the freezer for every type of tragedy and an opinion about everything. Then a month later, we were at a new dentist. The receptionist handed Megan a tablet to put in my insurance info. She clicked through screens quickly, nails tapping the glass, then handed it to me to sign. I glanced down out of habit. "Emergency contact, Hannah Green, best friend." "Why is Hannah my emergency contact?" I asked. Megan was already scrolling on her phone, probably answering a DM about rose quartz or celery juice. She looked up without really looking. "Because Hannah's my emergency contact and we're usually together," she said. "You're always up a pole or in some random field. They'll never reach you." "That's kind of the point," I said slowly. "They're not supposed to reach me when I'm hanging off a line. They're supposed to reach me when I'm in a hospital bed after I fall off one." She rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Rye. It's just the dentist. If you have a cavity, Hannah can handle it." I almost let it go, almost. "It's not about cavities," I said. "It's the principle. If I'm unconscious, I'd like the person they call to at least share my last name." She gave me that look, half amusement, half irritation, that I'd later learn meant I was brushing up against a boundary she hadn't announced but expected me to honor. "You're being clingy," she sang lightly, "not nice, not mean. It's just a form." I signed the tablet anyway. It felt stupid to argue about hypothetical emergencies when we were standing under a framed poster of a smiling tooth, but it sat in the back of my mind like a rock in a shoe. After that, I started paying attention. At the yoga studio where she worked part-time even after starting her wellness coaching, I overheard her telling a new hire, If I ever pass out here, call my mom or Hannah, not my husband. He works insane hours and never hears his phone. She said it like we'd had a conversation about it. We hadn't. It wasn't entirely untrue. When I'm up in a bucket truck or climbing, my phone is in the cab, not my pocket. But we have breaks. We have downtime. And if a strange number calls 3 times in a row, I answer. What bothered me wasn't the logistics. It was the assumption that I wouldn't show up, that I was the least reliable person in her life when it came to emergencies. Meanwhile, my HR file looked different. Every year in January, we have to review our beneficiary info, emergency contacts, all that fun stuff. For 9 years, Megan's name has been on every line. Primary beneficiary, Megan Sanders' spouse. Emergency contact, Megan Sanders' wife. Medical power of attorney, Megan, then my brother Tyler second. I listed Tyler because he's steady and local. My parents live 2 hours away in Waco, and my mom panics if she misplaces her keys. Never mind if she gets a phone call that starts with, "Are you sitting down?" But Megan was always the first call. At least, that was the story I told myself. The thing about stories is, eventually the plot holes get too big. The incidents started stacking up. There was the time last summer when I sliced my hand open on a piece of metal siding on a Saturday. Nothing catastrophic, but deep enough that I needed stitches. I called Megan from the garage, blood dripping down my wrist onto the dusty concrete. She didn't answer. It went straight to voicemail. I texted, "Call me. Cut my hand, might need ER." Nothing. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Not a call, Instagram notification. Megan had posted a boomerang of her and Hannah clinking green smoothies at some place in Deep Ellum, captioned, "Self-Care Saturday with my soul sister. Phone on DND if you need me. No, you don't." I laughed once, bitter. Then I wrapped my hand in a shop towel, drove myself to urgent care, and sat in the waiting room watching a Property Brothers rerun while my shirt stuck to my palm. She texted me an hour later, "Hey babe, what's up?" I sent her a picture of the stitches. She responded with 3 crying face emojis and, "OMG, are you okay? Why didn't you call me?" I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. Then I typed, "You had your phone on Do Not Disturb." She called me immediately. "Why would you text me something like that and not answer my call?" she demanded when I picked up. "I'm literally in a room with a nurse stitching my hand," I said. "I did call you. It went straight to voicemail." "Well, you know I turn it off during girl time," she said. "That's my one window to disconnect. You can't make me feel guilty for needing a break." "I'm not making you feel anything," I said. "I'm telling you what happened. I cut my hand, I called my wife. My wife was unreachable, so I took care of it myself. I'm fine. But it would have been nice not to drive one-handed." She softened then, apologized, blamed it on the app she uses that blocks calls during focus sessions. She promised to check her phone between zones, or whatever she called them. She brought me takeout and fussed over me that night. She posted a story about taking care of my hardworking lineman with a heart emoji over my bandaged hand. People commented about what a caring wife she was. I didn't say anything. Then there was the storm call in October. A tornado tore through a neighborhood north of us, ripping roofs off houses like they were made of paper. We worked 18 hours straight. At 2 in the morning, exhausted and wired, I sat in the cab of my truck and watched my buddy Miguel call his wife. She picked up on the second ring, voice sleepy but there. "You okay? You need anything?" I could hear her through the tinny speaker. He smiled, that loose, worn-out smile you only get when someone on the other end of the line sounds like home. "Just wanted to hear your voice," he said. "We're almost wrapped. I'll be back by 4. When he hung up, he looked at me. "You checking in with Megan?" he asked. I thought about it. I also thought about the last time I tried to call her after midnight during a storm call and gotten an auto-reply text. Megan has notifications silenced. Nah, I said. She's probably in some deep REM cycle she paid for. I made it a joke, but it tasted wrong. A week after that, I tried to have an actual conversation. We were at home, sitting at the kitchen table. She just finished recording a guided meditation for her podcast, and I'd finished my third load of laundry. My hands still smelled like detergent. Hers smelled like sage. Hey, I said, can we talk about something without you accusing me of attacking your wellness? She arched an eyebrow. That's a loaded opener, babe. It's about emergencies, I said, about you not answering your phone. Her shoulders tensed in that barely there way I'd gotten used to. If this is about self-care again. It's not about self-care, I cut in. It's about the fact that if I get hurt at work, the hospital is going to call you. Not Hannah, not your mom, you have to be reachable sometimes. She exhaled like she'd been holding that breath all day. I work with women who are drowning in expectations. I teach them to set boundaries. You of all people should respect that. Boundaries, I repeated. Okay, here's one of mine. If I call you twice in a row back to back, and I'm not the kind of guy who does that for nothing, I need you to check your phone, even if you're in a sound bath or whatever. That's controlling, she said immediately. You want to dictate my phone usage now. I'm not asking you to be available for every random thing, I said. I'm asking that in a marriage, in emergencies, we choose each other before we choose do not disturb. It's not control. It's part of the deal. You're catastrophizing, she said. You've never had a major accident, and if you do, that's what your crew is for. That's why you have workers' comp and supervisors. Why are you putting that on me? Because you're my wife, I thought. Out loud, I said. Because I'd like to imagine you'd want to be there if I was in a hospital bed. She sighed dramatically. I can't be someone's 911 and their emotional support and their housewife and their sex goddess and still have anything left for myself. I'm not asking for a sex goddess, I said. I'm asking for a person who answers the phone when their husband could be bleeding out. If you keep guilt-tripping me about hypotheticals, we're going to have a problem, she said calmly, like she was talking to one of her clients. I'm allowed to have no phone time. My therapist says my nervous system needs it. There it was, the trump card, therapist says. I looked at her across the table. The woman I'd promised to put first was telling me that her nervous system needed to be protected from the possibility of my broken body on the other end of the line. That was the first time a thought flickered through my mind that I didn't like at all. If something really bad happens, she's not the one who's going to take care of you. I pushed the thought away. We compromised, or at least I did. She agreed to put her focus mode on allow favorites, which meant my calls would break through if I was in her top 5 favorites in her phone. It felt juvenile, like we were in high school, but I took it. I even watched her add me, right under Hannah, her mom, and some breathwork teacher she worshipped. It made me feel marginally better, not good, but better. Then November came, and with it the accident. The day started like any other. Cold front had just moved in, the kind that makes the metal on the poles sting your hands even through gloves. We had a job out near Forney, replacing some aging hardware on a run of 3-phase lines that ran over a little 2-lane farm road. The sky was that flat Texas gray that always makes me feel like I'm in a movie that's waiting to decide if it's a drama or a horror film. We had the road partially closed, cones out, truck positioned, outriggers down. I'd been up and down 3 times already that morning. It was routine. We joked about the Cowboys game that weekend. Miguel played some terrible country song from his phone in the cab while we worked. I don't remember the actual fall. What I remember is the sound that came before it. A crack, not electrical, more like wood under strain, then a sharp sideways jolt. Later, the investigation would say the old crossarm had more internal rot than anyone thought, and when I put my weight just right, the brace gave, the arm twisted, and my harness snapped me sideways hard enough that I lost my grip. The secondary safety held for a second, then slipped. 20 feet is that high if you're sitting in the bleachers at a high school football game. It's brutal if you're falling. They said I bounced once when I hit the gravel shoulder. I don't remember that either. I don't remember Miguel screaming my name, or Jard hitting the emergency stop on the bucket controls and calling 911. I remember a white sky, too bright. I remember trying to take a breath like someone had parked a car on my chest. I remember the voice of a paramedic, female, calm and steady, saying, "Sir, can you tell me your name? You're at a job site on 740. We're going to take care of you." "Ryan," I thought I said. It might have come out as a groan. "Okay, Ryan, you took a fall. We're going to stabilize your neck and your arm, okay? Do you know what day it is?" "Thursday," I muttered. It might have been Friday. Time gets weird when you're lying on the side of the road with a collar on. I felt her hands on my helmet, then the awful sensation of it sliding off carefully, my head feeling too heavy. "Do you have any allergies, any medical conditions? Who's your emergency contact?" "Megan," I slurred, "my wife, wallet, back pocket." They found my ID, my insurance card, the little dog-eared HR printout I keep folded up with my benefit info because I'm old school like that. "She's got you," the paramedic said. "We'll call her from the hospital." That sentence should have been a comfort. It wasn't her fault my phone was shattered. It wasn't her fault my shoulder felt like it was on fire, or that my left arm wouldn't obey even when I tried to move my fingers. None of this was Megan's fault. But everything that came after was hers. The ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and questions I answered on autopilot. "Any chance you hit your head?" "I think so." "Can you move your toes?" "Yeah." "On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain?" 11, I grunted, trying to make a joke out of it. They gave me something in an IV that made everything cottony. We rolled into the ER at Baylor in Dallas somewhere around noon. By the time they'd done x-rays, a CT scan to rule out a brain bleed, and given me a more serious cocktail for the pain, I was in a bed behind a curtain with a hospital bracelet on my wrist that said, "Fall from height." Angela showed up about an hour into my stay. "Hey, Lyman," she said, "you staying with us tonight?" "Depends," I mumbled. "Got a better pillow than this." She chuckled. "We're waiting on ortho to look at your shoulder. In the meantime, I wanted to update you. We've been trying to reach your wife." I blinked. "You haven't." "Haven't gotten her yet, I mean," she corrected. "It goes to voicemail. We left a couple messages. Do you have any alternate numbers?" "Try her mom," I said, "or my brother Tyler, number S in the file." "We will," she said, "but we're supposed to keep trying the primary first unless you tell us otherwise." My head felt heavy. "Keep trying," I murmured. "She's probably in yoga or something." I pictured her mat rolled out somewhere, phone face down next to her, a little sign that said, "This is my hour." It stung, but I figured she'd notice the missed calls on water break or whatever. I dozed. Pain plus drugs plus fluorescent hum is a nasty lullaby. I woke to a different nurse checking my blood pressure, and the TV down the hall blaring a commercial for a mattress sale. "Any luck with my wife?" I asked blearily. "Not yet," she said. "We paged Angela. She's been dealing with it. You want us to call someone else?" "My brother," I croaked. "Call my brother." By the time Angela came back with the update, the words about the mud bath had already been spoken. I just didn't know it yet. "We finally reached your wife," she said. "She said she's at a spa. She'll come after her appointment." "After," I repeated dumbly. "What does that mean?" Angela hesitated. She sounded occupied. "Did she sound like my husband might be dying?" I asked. My voice was flat. She looked at me for a long beat. "No," she said quietly. She sounded irritated. That was before I asked for the exact words, before those 7 syllables took root under my skin and started growing. Tyler arrived 40 minutes later, out of breath, wearing jeans with drywall dust on them and a t-shirt from our high school. He took one look at me in the bed, and his face did this thing where it tried to be tough for my sake and failed. "Jesus, Rye," he said, grabbing the bedrill, "you look like hell." "Thanks," I said. "You've got ketchup on your shirt." He glanced down. From the burger I was eating when the hospital called to tell me my idiot brother fell off a pole, yeah. He turned to Angela. "What do you need from me? I'm listed as backup." "We needed someone to sign consent for sedation if we have to reduce his shoulder," she said, "and to drive him home if ortho clears him today." "I got it," he said. "Anything." He turned back to me. "Where's Megan?" "At a spa," I said. The words tasted like rust. His eyebrows shot up. "She's what?" "She'll come when her mud dries," I said. "Apparently." He thought I was joking. I watched the moment he realized I wasn't, and something in his jaw locked. He didn't say anything bad about her, not then. That's one thing about my brother. He'll think it. He just won't say it until you open the door. He stayed with me through the ortho consult, through the uncomfortable process of them manipulating my arm around to figure out exactly what I'd torn. He signed the consent when they gave me more sedatives to relax the muscles enough to get things back in place. He even filmed me saying stupid drugged-up things because that's what little brothers do, then deleted the video when he saw my face afterward. Megan showed up 3.5 hours after I'd arrived at the hospital. She breezed in wearing a white flowy cover-up over a bathing suit, her hair piled up in a messy bun that looked expensive, skin glowing in a way that probably cost more than my truck payment. She had a paper wristband on with the name of some spa in Uptown, and was carrying a green juice in one hand and her phone in the other. "Baby," she gasped, rushing to the side of the bed. "Oh my God, what happened? Are you okay? They said you fell, but they didn't say how far. I almost had a panic attack in the car." Angela, who was updating my chart at the foot of the bed, glanced up once, expression carefully neutral. I looked at my wife, the woman I'd married in a small church with bad air conditioning and great acoustics, the woman who'd cried when my mom gave her a quilt my grandmother had made. She was here. She was asking if I was okay. Objectively, if you took a photo right then, it would look like concern. All I could hear was, "Can this wait? I'm in a mud bath." "I'm fine," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Banged up, shoulders a mess." "You scared the hell out of me," she said, tears actually in her eyes. "I was in this relaxation room, no phones allowed, and I came out and had like 6 missed calls from some hospital number. I thought my heart was going to explode." "The hospital's policy is to keep trying until we reach the primary contact," Angela said mildly. "We left a couple voicemails too." "I told them that's so messed up to blow up someone's phone like that," Megan said, half laughing in that way people do when they're trying to turn something into a funny story. "Like, I get it if it's like a heart attack, but he's okay." "It was a fall from height onto a hard surface," Angela said. "We don't know someone's fine until we know, and we need consent for certain procedures." Megan's smile flickered. "Well, I'm here now," she said. "I'll take him home. Thank you for taking care of him." She leaned over and kissed my forehead, lingering a second too long. "I'm so mad at you," she whispered. "You can't do this to me. My nervous system cannot handle this kind of thing." There it was again, my accident as something that happened to her. Tyler, standing at the foot of the bed, made a noise that could have been a cough or a scoff. It was hard to tell. "Hey Meg," he said. "Good to see you. You missed the part where they popped his shoulder back in. 10 out of 10, very soothing for the nervous system." She glared at him. "I came as soon as I could," she repeated. I didn't answer. I was tired of justifying why I thought I was allowed to have basic expectations. On the way out, as Tyler pushed the wheelchair and Megan walked ahead to get the car from the lot, Angela touched my good shoulder lightly. "Mr. Sanders," she said quietly, "I'm sorry about earlier." "Earlier?" I asked. She hesitated. "I probably shouldn't say this, but when we finally reached your wife, she didn't sound like most wives do in that situation. I just want you to know we also called your brother pretty quickly. You weren't alone." "Yeah," I said, "I know, thanks." "Next time you fill out a form," she said, lowering her voice, "you can change the order, just saying." I nodded. I'd already mentally done it. The ride home was a blur of pain and silence. Tyler drove my truck. I sat in the back because it was easier to get my arm in that way. Megan rode in the front, scrolling on her phone. Once I saw the Instagram app open. She closed it quickly, as if that made a difference. "You should have seen the look on Hannah's face when I told her what happened," she said suddenly, twisting in her seat to look at me. She dropped her loofah. "You told Hannah before you left the spa?" Tyler asked, eyes on the road. "Well, yeah," Megan said. "She was literally with me. I couldn't just ghost her." "Hospital calls, you can ghost the mud bath," he said mildly. "Not helpful, Tyler," she snapped. Nobody said anything after that. That night I slept in the recliner because lying flat made my shoulder scream. Megan fussed over me, made me chamomile tea, brought me my pain meds on schedule. She posted a close-up of our hands, mine with the hospital band still on, hers with our rings, captioned, "Life is fragile. Hug your people a little tighter tonight." The comments flooded in. "So scary sending love." "You're such a rock for him." "Couple goals." I stared at my phone, then at her on the couch next to me, face lit by the glow of her screen as she replied to each comment with a heart. "Why didn't you answer when the hospital called?" I asked finally. She sighed, like we'd already had this argument 100 times, and I was boring her. "Babe, we've talked about this," she said. "I was in a no-phone zone, literal signs on the wall about it. They take people's devices at the door. It's trauma-informed. People go there to heal." "So they couldn't have gotten you out if the hospital said your husband was dying?" I asked. "That's so manipulative," she said. "You weren't dying. They said you were stable. You're catastrophizing again. And even if it were that serious, you had your brother, you had your crew, you're not some orphan." "You are my person," I said, the words coming out low and rough. "Or at least you're supposed to be. That's what in case of emergency means. It doesn't mean unless I'm in a mud bath." Her eyes flashed, defensive. "Are you seriously using my self-care against me right now? After everything I've done to build a life where I'm not constantly on edge? My therapist said people would try to guilt me when I enforced my boundaries." "This isn't you turning your phone off for a nap," I said. "This is the hospital trying to reach you for 3 hours while they're scanning my brain to see if it's bleeding, and you told them to wait." "I didn't know what they wanted," she snapped. "They said you fell. People fall all the time." "Not from 20 feet, I said. "You're twisting my words," she said. "I was in a vulnerable state. I had mud on my face. I wasn't in a place to make big decisions. It wouldn't have changed anything if I'd picked up earlier. You're just mad because I didn't drop everything the second the world demanded it." I looked at her, at the way she'd turned this into an abstract debate about boundaries and capitalism and trauma when all I wanted was for her to say, "I'm sorry. I should have answered. It won't happen again." "I'm mad," I said slowly, "because I realized today that if it had been worse, if my neck had snapped instead of my shoulder, the person who would have identified my body first is my little brother, not my wife." "Don't say things like that," she whispered. "That's dark." "It's reality," I said. "My reality, and I'm done pretending I'm okay with it." She folded her arms, suddenly smaller on the couch. "So what, you're going to punish me now? Take away my spa days, track my phone? What's your plan, Rye?" My plan was already forming, and it wasn't about her spa days. It was about my beneficiaries. "I'm going to bed," I said instead. "We can talk tomorrow." The thing was, I slept better in that recliner, even with my arm screaming every time I shifted, than I had in months. Not because of the pain meds, because something had finally snapped into focus. The next morning, Tyler picked me up at 8. "You sure you're okay to go out?" Megan asked, hovering in the doorway in her robe, coffee cup cradled in her hands. "I've got follow-up stuff," I said. "Paperwork, HR, doctor." "I can take you," she said quickly. "I blocked my schedule. I moved 2 clients. You don't have to drag Tyler into this." Tyler, leaning on the porch rail, raised his eyebrows but said nothing. "It's fine," I said. "He offered, and you've got a lot of nervous system maintenance to catch up on." Her mouth tightened. "Wow," she said, "mean." "You said it," I replied. "I'm just matching temperature." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Fine, go, don't expect dinner when you get back. I have a sound bath at 6. I grabbed my keys off the hook with my good hand and followed Tyler to the truck. We drove in silence for a few miles, the morning traffic already thick on I-30. My arm ached under the sling. Every bump sent a jolt through my shoulder. "So," Tyler said finally, "how dead are you inside?" "Dead enough," I said. "Good," he said. "That makes this easier." He glanced at me. "You want to hit HR first or the bank?" "HR," I said. "They open first." Our company's HR office is in a nondescript building next to the warehouse, all beige carpet and motivational posters about teamwork. Donna, the HR rep, looked up as we walked in. Her eyes went straight to my sling. "Oh my God, Ryan," she said. "We heard about the fall. How are you?" "I've been better," I said. "Got time for some paperwork." "For you, always," she said. "We'll also need to do your incident report, but I know your supervisor already sent in the basics." She printed out a stack of forms and slid them across her desk. Workers, comp, short-term disability, light-duty restrictions for the next few weeks. I signed them all with my right hand, scrawling worse than a left-handed toddler. Then I said, as casually as you can say something that changes your whole life, "While I'm here, can I update my emergency contact and beneficiaries?" "Of course," she said, swiveling to her computer. "Give me 1 second. Okay. Currently have Megan Sanders as your primary beneficiary on the life insurance and 401k and primary emergency contact. Secondary is Tyler Sanders." "I want to flip that," I said. "Make Tyler primary on both. My parents as secondary beneficiaries. You can leave Megan as tertiary if you need another line, but I want my brother first." Donna looked up slowly. "We've known each other a while. She knows my wife's name. She's seen Megan at company picnics." "Is everything okay?" she asked. "Everything is accurate," I said. "Tyler is the person who shows up when the hospital calls. The files should reflect that." Tyler stirred in the chair next to me. "You don't have to." "Yeah," I said, not looking at him. "I do." Donna studied my face for a second, then nodded. "Got it," she said. "We can also update who's authorized to get information about your medical leave. Right now Megan's listed. Do you want to add Tyler?" "Make him primary there too," I said. "If my wife needs info, she can call him." She made a few quick clicks. "Okay, done. You'll get a confirmation email." "Print it," I said. "My email's on my phone and my phone's, well, you saw it." She printed. I folded the paper carefully and slid it into the inside pocket of my jacket. From there, we went to the bank. The woman behind the glass saw the sling, the hospital bracelet I hadn't cut off yet, and didn't ask many questions when I asked to open a new individual checking account. "We already have a joint account with your wife," she said politely. "Are you wanting to add this as a secondary?" "Individual," I said. "Just me. My checks go in here now. Joint can stay for household bills." Tyler sat next to me. scrolling on his phone, giving me space. I didn't empty the joint account. I didn't freeze anything. I just stopped putting new money into a bucket that someone else had started treating like their personal spa fund. After the bank, we drove to a little law office in a strip mall near Mesquite that smelled like dust and coffee. The sign on the door said, "Family Law, Free Consultation." "Are you sure?" Tyler asked quietly as we sat in the parking lot. "No," I said, "but I'm here." He nodded. "That's enough." The lawyer's name was Christina. Mid-40s, no nonsense, hair pulled back in a bun that meant business. She listened as I told her, in broad strokes, why a years-long marriage was wobbling on the edge of a cliff because of a spa day. "You fell," she said, leaning back. "The hospital couldn't reach your wife for several hours. She was at a spa with her phone off. When they did reach her, she asked if it could wait." "Those were her words," I said. "And this isn't the first time she's been unreachable in an emergency," Christina said. "Not even close," I said. She nodded slowly. "Texas is a no-fault state. You don't have to prove she's a bad person to get a divorce. You just have to decide it's insupportable. But I get the feeling this isn't just about the law for you." "It's about clarity," I said. "About realizing I might die before I turn 40 because of my job, and knowing the person who gets the check afterward thinks my life is worth less than a mud bath." Christina's mouth quirked. "That's one way to put it. You want to move on this now, or are we talking hypotheticals?" I thought about Megan's face when she'd said I was using the accident to control her. I thought about Angela's quietly angry eyes. I thought about Tyler dropping everything to come sit beside my hospital bed while my wife negotiated with herself about whether her nervous system could handle it. "Not hypothetical," I said. "I want to know what it looks like to be done." We spent an hour going over assets. House, cars, joint accounts, her tiny LLC that barely broke even but that she talked about like it was Apple. "We don't have kids," I said, "so it's simpler." "That does simplify custody," Christina said dryly. "We can file, ask for a fairly simple split given the length of the marriage and your incomes. You make more. She may ask for spousal support. We'll see what a judge thinks is fair." "Can she go after my life insurance?" I asked. "Not after you're divorced," Christina said. "Before that, it's whoever you list as beneficiary. Sounds like you've already addressed that." "Yeah," I said, "I did." She slid a packet of papers across the desk. "If you're serious, sign here, here, and here. We can have her served within a week." I signed with my right hand, my scrawl shaky but legible. Driving home, wrapped in that strange numbness that comes after big, irreversible decisions, I looked over at Tyler. "You think I'm overreacting?" I asked. He shook his head. "Nope," he said. "I think you're finally reacting." When we pulled into the driveway, Megan's car was gone. There was a sticky note on the counter when I walked in. "Went to a workshop on nervous system regulation with Hannah. Left you some frozen soup. Heat on stove, don't nuke, M." I stared at the note for a long time. "No, how was HR? No, how are you feeling? Just a helpful cooking instruction for soup." I put the note in the same jacket pocket as the HR printout. Receipts, in more ways than one. That night, when she got home, I started the conversation I knew would end our marriage. She came in smelling like Palo Santo and expensive incense, cheeks flushed from whatever breathwork they'd done. She kicked off her shoes by the door, immediately launching into a story. "You would have loved this, actually," she said. The facilitator talked about how working-class men are conditioned to ignore their bodies, like linemen, construction workers, truck drivers, constantly overriding their nervous systems. It's so sad. "Yeah," I said. "Yeah," she said earnestly. "And he said it's actually abusive when their partners demand emotional labor on top of that, like expecting them to be available constantly. That's why I'm so protective of my space. I don't want to do that to you." You think I'm asking you for labor when I want you to pick up the phone while I'm in the ER? I asked. She froze, the bag of herbal tea she'd been pulling out of her tote half out. Are we really doing this again? She asked. We didn't do it the first time, I said. You gave me a TED talk about boundaries and walked away. She set the tea down slowly, like we were in a movie, and the director had just yelled, "Dramatic pause." Okay, she said. Fine, say what you need to say. I changed my emergency contact today, I said. At work, it's Tyler now, not you. Her face went white then red. What? She said. Why would you do that? Because in case of emergency, he's the one who answers, I said. The paperwork should match reality. That's so extreme, she stammered. You're punishing me for one miscommunication. It wasn't one, I said. It was a pattern. It was the hand cut, the storm calls, the dentist, the workshop where you told people not to call me. Yesterday was just the invoice coming due. You can't talk about me like I'm a bill, she said, voice shaking. I'm your wife. I know, I said quietly. That's what makes this sad instead of just administrative. Tears pooled in her eyes. You're making me sound like some selfish monster, she whispered. All because I went to a spa. Do you know how insane that sounds? He divorced me because I was at a spa when he fell. People are going to think you're crazy. I didn't say anything about divorce, I said. Yet. She stared at me, searching my face. Yet, she repeated, her voice small. I met her eyes. I had a consultation today, I said. I signed papers. You'll be served sometime this week. She staggered back a step like I'd hit her. No, she said. No, you didn't. You wouldn't do that over this. You're just trying to scare me. I was scared on the side of that road, I said. I was scared in the ambulance. I was scared in the CT scanner. I am not scared now. I'm clear. This is insane, she said, voice rising. People fight. People screw up. They go to therapy. They don't blow up their whole lives because their wife took a mud bath. The mud bath was just the part that made it obvious, I said. Obvious that when things are good, you want to be my partner. When things are bad, you want to be your own priority. You can't have both. You're twisting self-love into selfishness, she snapped. That's patriarchal as hell. I teach my clients to put their oxygen mask on first. I fell out of a plane, I said. You took a nap. She flinched. You think anyone else would leave their marriage over this? She demanded, desperate now. My therapist is going to say you're being avoidant, that you're running away instead of working on the relationship. Your therapist doesn't have to lie on the ground wondering if the person they married is going to let it go to voicemail, I said. And I'm not avoiding anything. I'm making a decision. You didn't even give me a chance to change, she cried. If you told me how serious this was to you, I would've. I held up my good hand. I told you, I said, last year and last month and 2 nights ago. She shut her mouth. When I asked you to treat my calls like they mattered, you said I was controlling, I said. When I pointed out that I could have died, you said I was manipulating you. I was dysregulated, she whispered. You were inconvenienced, I corrected. There's a difference. She sank into the chair across from me, burying her face in her hands. What am I supposed to tell people? She asked, voice muffled. That my husband left me because I set boundaries. Tell them I left because I finally believed you, I said. You've been telling people for years that you're not anyone's emergency contact. I'm just adjusting my paperwork accordingly. She looked up, eyes red. I love you, she said. It came out half question, half protest. I believed her. That was the saddest part. She did love me in the way she was capable of. She loved our house and our dog and the version of me that fit into her curated feed. But love without responsibility is just a feeling. You can't build a life on that. I love you too, I said. And I love myself enough not to sign up for being an afterthought when it counts. The doorbell rang. She jumped. Who is that? I didn't answer. I just looked at the clock. Right on time. She went to the door, wiping her face quickly, pulling her robe tighter. "Good evening," I heard a man's voice say. "Are you Megan Sanders?" "Yes," she said warily. "I have some legal documents for you," he said. "You've been served." The door closed. A second later, she stormed back into the living room, a manila envelope in her hand like it was a snake. "You really did it," she said, voice shaking. "You actually did it." I nodded. The sling on my arm felt heavier. "You had me served while you're still in a sling," she spat. "That's cold." "I matched temperature," I said quietly. That night I slept in the spare bedroom. Megan cried in hours, loud enough that I was sure the neighbors could hear. Old me would have gone in, tried to fix it, soothed her, apologized for hurting her feelings even while my own were gutted. New me stared at the ceiling fan and let the tears run into my ears, feeling them soak the pillow. The days after that were a blur of logistics and performances. Megan posted a carefully vague story about going through a tough season and remembering that your worth isn't defined by who chooses or doesn't choose you. Her followers flooded her DMs with sympathy. Some of them I knew personally. Women who'd sat at our table, eaten my barbecue, watched football with me while their husbands and I argued about whose brisket recipe was better. One of them, Jenna, texted me privately. "Hey," she wrote, "I know it's none of my business, but Megan is saying you blindsided her out of nowhere. Are you okay?" I stared at the little gray and blue bubbles for a long time before I replied. "I fell 20 feet at work," I wrote back. "The hospital tried to call her for 3 hours. She told them she was in a mud bath and asked if it could wait. I decided not to spend the rest of my life with someone who needs a facial more than she needs to know if I'm alive. That's the whole story." There was a long pause, then, "Jesus," Jenna wrote. "Okay, that's a lot. For what it's worth, if Mark ever did that to me, he'd be dead to me too. Whatever you need, let us know. Mark said he can help you with the fence whenever your arm's better." Chosen family. People who see you bleeding and bring tools, not excuses. My parents came up from Waco the following weekend. Mom hugged me so carefully I almost broke. "You should have told us sooner," she said, wiping at her eyes. "We would have come to the hospital." "I knew you'd panic," I said weakly. "I'd rather panic in a waiting room than find out from your brother after the fact," she sniffed. "Don't you ever make that decision for me again." Dad pulled me aside later, out by the grill. "You sure about this?" he asked, flipping burgers with the hand that had taught me how to hold a wrench. "Yeah," I said, "I am." He nodded. "Your mother's going to blame herself," he said. "Don't let her. This isn't how we raised you to be okay with someone treating you like they're clocking in for the good parts only." "This isn't about how you raised me," I said. "It's about how she's wired and what she values, and about me deciding not to argue with that anymore." He looked at my sling, at the bruise still yellowing on my temple. "When you were 5, you fell off the jungle gym," he said suddenly. "Split your chin open. You don't remember, you were crying too hard. Your mom carried you to the truck barefoot. We were 10 minutes from the ER. She didn't even lock the door behind us. Left it wide open. We looked like idiots, but she didn't care. She just kept saying, 'My baby, my baby.'" I swallowed hard. "Yeah," I said, "that sounds like her." He flipped a burger, the sizzle loud in the quiet yard. "This isn't about spa days," he said. "It's about who runs barefoot and who checks their schedule." Megan didn't come by while they were there. She texted me once, asking if I could pick up the rest of her things from the yoga studio storage room because it's too much for my little car. I replied, "Ask Hannah." She sent a long paragraph about how I was being petty, how divorce didn't have to be punitive, how conscious uncoupling is about maintaining respect. I didn't answer. Respect doesn't start after the papers get filed. The legal process itself was as tedious and unromantic as you'd imagine. Financial disclosures, mediation dates, Zoom calls where Megan sat flanked by her lawyer, eyes puffy, talking about emotional abandonment like I hadn't been standing under live wires trying to fund her retreats. She argued for alimony. Christina argued back that she had a business, however small, and that I'd be on light duty for months, maybe permanently, because of my shoulder. The judge split the house equity down the middle, as expected. She kept her car, I kept mine. We closed the joint credit card. The one thing I didn't budge on was my retirement accounts and insurance. I'd already moved the beneficiaries. The court couldn't retroactively make me leave my death benefit to someone who'd proven what my actual value was to them. During one particularly tense mediation session, Megan snapped, "What would you have done if I died in a car accident and had my phone on D&D? Huh, would you want to be blamed for that too?" "No," I said. "I would have been at the hospital before the car cooled off. That's the difference." She looked away. A month after the accident, I went back to the hospital for a follow-up with ortho, alone by choice. As I sat in the waiting room flipping through a dog-eared field and stream, I noticed my file path on the intake form. Emergency contact, Tyler Sanders' brother. For the first time, the document matched the truth. Dr. HSU, the orthopedic surgeon, poked and prodded my shoulder, watching my face for reactions. "You heal well," she said. "Give it another 2 months and you can start easing back into more activity. Maybe not full-scale climbing right away, but we'll get you there." "Good," I said. "I miss the view." She smiled. "Most people don't say that about power lines." "I'm not most people," I said. "Clearly," she said. "How's everything else? Support system okay? This kind of injury can shake people up." I thought about my brother driving me to appointments, my mom making casseroles, my dad standing in my half-finished fence with a post-hole digger. I thought about coworkers checking in, bringing over beer and bad jokes. I thought about an empty mud bath. "I'm good," I said. "I've got the right people listed now." She nodded, like she knew there was more to that sentence and also knew better than to ask. 3 months after the fall, the divorce was finalized. It didn't happen in some grand courtroom. It was a stack of papers sent via DocuSign and a perfunctory 10-minute Zoom hearing with a judge who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Mr. and Mrs. Sanders," he said, glancing at the screen, "you both understand this decree is final." "Yes, Your Honor," I said. Megan hesitated for a heartbeat, then nodded. "Yes." "Very well," he said. "Divorce is granted. Good luck to you both." And that was it. 9 years dissolved with a mouse click and a rote blessing. After the call ended, my phone buzzed. A text from Megan. "I hope someday you see how extreme this was," she wrote. "And I hope your nervous system lets you rest knowing you blew up our life over a phone call." I stared at it for a long time before I replied. "I didn't blow up our life over a phone call," I wrote back. "I ended a marriage where I was never going to be your first call. There's a difference." Then, for the first time in our entire relationship, I blocked her. No angry follow-ups, no late-night nostalgia texts, just silence. People talk about revenge like it has to be loud. Keyed cars, scorched earth, public shaming. Mine was paperwork and quiet. I didn't tell my story on social media. I didn't name names. When people asked, I said, "We wanted different things," because that was simpler than explaining that what I wanted was to not die alone while my wife was in a steam room. Word still got around, of course. Mutual friends choose sides even when they pretend they don't. Jenna and her husband stayed in my corner. Miguel and his wife had me over for dinner more, their kids climbing on my good arm like I was a jungle gym. My parents called more often, but not in a smothering way. Just enough to remind me that there were still people whose first instinct was to run barefoot. Tyler and I grew closer in a way I didn't know I needed. We'd always been tight, but there's a different kind of bond that forms when someone signs your hospital consent forms and your divorce papers in the same week. One night, months later, we were on his back porch drinking beers, my shoulder finally letting me forget about it for longer stretches. "You know she tells people you divorced her because she went to a spa, right?" he said. "I'm sure the story plays better that way," I said. "She leaves out the part where the spa lasted longer than the hospital's patients," he said, "and the part where she asked if they could call back after her pores were clear." I shrugged. People can believe whatever makes them sleep. "You sleep?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "for the first time in a long time, actually." That's the thing nobody tells you about leaving someone who didn't show up when it mattered. You grieve the idea of them, the Instagram moments, the cozy nights, the way they fit against you in bed. You grieve the voice that used to say, "Text me when you get there," before the focus modes and the no-phone zones took over. But you also gain something quieter. You gain the ability to look at a form that says, "In case of emergency, notify," and not feel like you're lying. 6 months after the accident, I went back to full duty. Climbing that first pole again was strange. My palms were sweaty inside my gloves. My heart raced at the first click of my spikes biting into the wood. But my body remembered. My hands knew the knots. My feet knew the rhythm. Up, set, test. The world looked different from up there, but in a way that made sense. Miguel glanced up at me from the ground. "How's it feel?" he hollered. "Like home," I called back. That night I stood in my kitchen in my small rental. Because yeah, I sold the big house and moved into a more manageable place closer to the yard, and looked at the magnet board on my fridge. There was a takeout menu, a picture of me and Tyler at a Rangers game, my nephew's drawing of me as a superhero with a lightning bolt on my chest. And there, held up by a cheap magnet shaped like Texas, was a card from Angela from the hospital. She de-mailed it a month after my fall. "Glad you're okay," she'd written in neat nurse handwriting. "Next time, make your forms accurate from the start." Underneath, she'd drawn a little lightning bolt. I smiled, grabbed my phone, and scrolled to my emergency contact settings. Primary, Tyler Sanders. Secondary, Mom. Tertiary, Dad. There was a time when that list would have felt like a failure. Proof I hadn't built the kind of romantic partnership everyone on Instagram seems to think is the pinnacle of life. Now it felt like insurance, not just the monetary kind, but a guarantee. In case of emergency, these are the people who will pick up, who will run barefoot, who will sit in plastic chairs under fluorescent lights until a doctor says, "He's going to be okay." People ask sometimes when they hear the story, usually from my side, not the spa version, if I regret it. If I ever wonder if I should have gone to more therapy, tried harder, waited longer. I don't. Therapy can help you communicate better. It can't make someone value your life more than their relaxation membership. What I regret are all the times I laughed off the rock in my shoe instead of taking it out. The times I told myself it was just a form or just a focus mode, instead of listening to the quiet truth underneath. She was telling me who she was over and over, in how she showed up and who she showed up for. When someone tells you they're not going to be there when it counts, believe them. Don't wait for a neck brace and a sling to be your wake-up call. These days my life is smaller. No big house, no influencer wife. My shoulder still aches when it rains. I make my own coffee in the mornings, the way I like it, without worrying if the grinder will ruin someone's meditation. Sometimes I sit on my tiny back steps and watch the sun catch on the power lines at dusk, those thin black veins that keep this whole city humming. Up there it's just you, the harness and the wire. You learn quickly who you can trust when the world shakes. For a long time, I thought trust meant putting one person's name on every line and ignoring all the ways they told me I was an interruption. Now I know better. Trust is my brother dropping his tools to come sit beside my bed. It's my mom sleeping in a chair because she doesn't want to miss the doctor's rounds. It's my dad grilling burgers in my busted yard just so I don't have to eat another microwaved dinner alone. Trust is a form that matches how people actually behave. Revenge, if you can even call it that, isn't me keying Megan's car or exposing her in the comments of her own self-love posts. It's me living a life where the next time a paramedic asks, "Who's your emergency contact?" I can answer with a name that doesn't flinch at the sound of the phone. It's me keeping my own nervous system steady, not because I've blocked out the world, but because I finally got honest about who I can count on when the lights go out. And it's the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the next time someone writes my name on a chart under "in case of emergency," the person who gets that call won't ask if it can wait.